Welcome back to week 20 of Stewardship in Motion. We've been having an awesome time over the last couple weeks. We've been building this thing out pretty much layer by layer. Talked last week about making your money work for you. Tonight we're talking about keeping enough of that money in order to give it a job. Because I think many people begin to build momentum financially, and that's from an income perspective. As we grow older, our careers mature, and then we consume everything that we've produced. And tonight is about learning how to keep what wisdom help you build. So our title for tonight is Don't Consume the Seed, the Wisdom of Reserves. So pretty poignant title. It's all around Proverbs 21 verse 20. This is actually one of the core scriptures we use a lot within the MOB Academy as we try to align faith with finances. So it reads as follows: the wise store up choice food and olive oil, and this is the part I love, but fools gulp theirs down. So that's from the New Version of Proverbs. So look closely at the contrast there for a minute. The wise person stores, the foolish person consumes. Not because they don't receive enough, but because they lack restraint. And notice the wording: choice food and olive oil. These weren't leftovers. In ancient Israel, olive oil wasn't just food. It was medicine, it was fuel for lamps. In some cases, it was actually currency as well. So storing olive oil wasn't hoarding, it was strategic optionality. That's to probably use 21st language. That's probably the best way I can explain it. So the wise person understood that their resource has value beyond today's meal. The wise understand something powerful. Not everything you produce is meant to be consumed immediately. So wisdom preserves and folly devours. The old people used to say, haste makes waste, right? But I like to, this is a adage, so wisdom preserves, folly devours. That is what you should extract from that scripture. So olive oil, like I mentioned earlier, in Solomon's time, think of it as liquid capital in ours. Mature stewardship shows the difference between what we should enjoy now and what we should preserve to create options for ourselves later. This is key. This is the key principle of today's discussion. So I want you to think about how our culture teaches us to handle the increases that we have. So let's give an example. You get a raise, then you can't live in the same neighborhood. You can't drive the same car. So you start to upgrade your lifestyle, right? Because you may have a new title, a new position, right? You get a bonus. Let's go a little smaller. And you're like, man, I worked hard for that. I need to reward myself. I got to take care of a portion of this. Our culture celebrates consumption because scripture but scripture celebrates stewardship. So our culture celebrates consumption, consume, flaunt, show off, build, ownership. But scripture rewards using and managing what we have been given to the best of our abilities. And that's one of the greatest signs of financial maturity, is the ability to resist the urge to consume everything you have access. And that's the component of keeping your money in one account. And that's where I think in modern culture we get tied up, because we have all our money in one account and then we're working to zero. I heard it said best that, if you grow up without money, money makes you uncomfortable. So when you get money, you do everything possible to get rid of it. So, because here's the truth. Some of what enters your hand isn't meant for today. Some of it is seed, some of it should be reserves, and some of it should be preparation for your future season, one that you cannot see. And for me, that's a place that I'm living in right now. I worked in corporate America for many years, 16 plus years. I had a career in real estate kind of before and simultaneously for over 20 years. So I had seasons where my income was really high. And as I transitioned to this other phase of my life, it's a season I had to prepare for. I had to have assets that are cash producing. I had to have reserves in order to physically make a transition out of corporate America. But here's the core problem for most of us, why most people talk about leaving corporate America, talk about starting their own thing, but they never actually get to it. Because most people don't lose financially because they lack income. They lose because they consume everything they produce. This is what keeps people stuck. It's not the reserves. It's not that margin that I talked about that I tried to build and maintain within my life. It's not retained earnings. It's not the emergency fund. It's not the investment capital, because every increase immediately became lifestyle. That's why they don't get to the end result that in their mind they imagine and dream about. That's why they don't have the investment capital, the emergency fund. Everything is just getting burned as it is received. And then when there's a downturn in the economy, when major companies, one you may work for, begins to lay off and that pressure begins, you have nothing stored. So remember, here's the key on this slide. The wise person thinks differently. Well, what do they think about, Lionel? Not all money is spending money. Not all increases should equal a lifestyle increase. And not all abundance, seasons of high earnings, seasons of extra capital, seasons of extra resources, seasons of abundant blessings, they're not permanent. And because of that, they preserve before they begin to consume. And that's what's important. Let me give you a quick story. Marcus and Tanya. So 3 years ago, their household income went from about $65,000 to $130,000. So you're thinking, oh man, that's great. They doubled their income. They should have felt some sort of freedom, some sort of release. They've got extras now. Instead, the opposite happened over a very short time. They felt more trapped than ever because with the new raises and new titles and positions came new cars with payments. Then they didn't like the place where they lived and thinking about starting a family. They want to move to a better place. So they got a more expensive apartment, which was bigger. And of course, the dreaded subscriptions begin to mount up. And you can't not go on the same vacation that your friends Sally and Tim went on 2 weekends ago. You have to go to Cabo too, right? You got to go to Costa Rica too. So things begin to get better all around as we're making better money. And then their income doubled, but their margin between their expenses and their income, that never shifted. So you would think, okay, you're making income, you have expenses, and you have whatever's left over. And then your income doubles, you would think that margin is still there, but no, that margin instantly grows at the same rate. I've talked about this many times. It's called the Parkinson's rule, right? So the problem wasn't their opportunity. The problem was that their appetite expanded faster than any system that they had in place to manage to keep that margin in check in order so they could reap the benefits of doubling their income. So that story happens to people all the time where there's a significant increase in their income, but they don't have a system to keep their margin intact and then a system to redirect the extra capital so they're actually beginning to get ahead. They simply make more and live more, if that makes sense. So How do we solution this? How do we get Marcus and Tanya back to having a margin and having some financial stability? So let's give them 3 steps that they can employ today to help them manage that income that doubled over the last 3 years. Step 1, preserve. You have to stop eating everything. And for some of us, that's literal. We Starbucks in the morning, we hit something for lunch with a couple coworkers, and then we're really busy. I didn't do any meal prep. I'm on the way home. Honey, do you want me to pick something up? Yeah, I'll just grab something. And then that's 3 meals out of the day that were purchased, right? So some of us simply are literally eating our margin. For some of us, again, we talked about it. It may be the vehicle. It may be where you live. It may be your vacationing and self-care and entertainment. Entertainment is always huge for us, particularly with subscriptions, reoccurring monthly things that we have for entertainment. We may have purchased it for one event or one thing, and then it goes on forever because we never looked back at it. Those are the things that are destroying our margin and taking away the money that should be set aside for future and for investments. That's pretty self-explanatory. No need for me to go any further into that one. Let's get to step 2. Separate. That's really what I teach in the 7-account framework. That is found in the Minding Our Business Financial Academy. So that 7-account framework is really about diversifying the 80% that you have left over. So know what is seed and know what is food. This is one of the biggest stewardship mistakes that people make. They eat what they were supposed to plant. So I want to be honest with you for a second. Because someone right now is thinking, don't I deserve to enjoy what I earn? I hear it all the time. I work hard. I deserve it. Yeah, you do. But within that enjoyment, within your total income, there's money that's meant for you to live and enjoy, eat, drink, and be merry. There's money that can be set aside to give, influence, community, ministry, purpose. And there is money that should belong to the future, whether it's you personally and or family and loved ones. There is margin inside of your income right now. You may say, Lionel, no, I don't see it. I think that's the correct statement. You don't see it. You haven't looked. Avoidance is usually what stops us from looking and finding those margins because we have to make tough decisions. Because I'm not going to do what people did on Instagram. So what? The newest pair of Jordan, whatever they are coming out. So what? Louis Vuitton has the new in TikTok purse. We have to break from these constraints of feeling like our personality, our value is tied up in the things that we own. That's ultimately what it is. So the avoidance of not looking at these things is really us avoiding things that we haven't dealt with in ourselves, things we may not have surrendered to our faith and been healed from, or allowed your faith to mature beyond that point. So it's really not a financial thing. It's really us and our emotions. So what does the future hold? The future holds many things for us. So in that case, if you're planning on having a future, like it says on this slide, you should have money for living, money for giving, money for enjoying, but then you should also still have money for the future. Seed to invest in, seed capital available for investments. You should have reserves in case something happens, the layoffs continue. You should have reserves for investments today and later on investments in your future, those future opportunities for you and your family. Wise stewards separate the two. And it doesn't happen from an emotional space. The emotional space is what keeps us in this bondage. It happens systematically when we develop a system that automates things for us, so it takes that emotional decision out of our hands. So here's a simple starting point. When your income hits, it should get divided. Again, if you want another framework, the 10-10-80 framework is one that we teach in the Minding Our Business Academy. 10% goes to giving in a separate account. So the 10-10-80 framework and the 7-account framework work in tandem. 10% goes to giving, 10% goes to saving. You live off the 80%. The other 5 accounts that I've been talking about, so just the giving account, the savings account, the other 5 accounts are what help you live within the 80 and forecast things within your own financial life, so they're taken care of. Money has a job, money's assigned, and then you're not nipping and tucking and robbing from Peter to pay Paul and all of the poor economic phrases that we've integrated into our vocabulary. So it's all about percentages. So let's remember, not every dollar should solve today's cravings. Some dollars need to be assigned for your future. Let's get to step 3, restraint. You have to restrain yourself. You have to build your muscle of enough, sufficiency. This is the hardest part of all of it because it's an everyday thing. It's fighting all the things that I just talked about in this short discussion, right? It's all the things social media is telling us. It's all the things the billion-dollar corporations have paid millions and trillions of dollars to make ads and commercials and all these psychological things to make you want to do it. It's the pressure of standard of living and all these things, depending on what culture you're a part of and the groups you socialize with. There may be some pressure to fit in and look and dress and drive and all those things like your peers and the people in those circles you're in. So it's the hardest part. And it is deeply countercultural because, like I said, the entire U.S. economy is based on your consumption. So everything around you is telling you to upgrade. Everything around you is telling you to come, try, indulge. Everything around you is telling you you've worked hard, reward yourself with this thing. And so we've just normalized lifestyle inflation until things get aggressive, like the price of gas right now, and then we're up in arms about it. But as things have been slowly creeping in the other areas of our life, we don't pay the same attention to that. But restraint says, I don't need to consume everything I can afford, because sometimes we use the affordability excuse as a reason to misappropriate and a reason to consume more. Well, I can afford it. I make a good salary. That's not maturity. That's not wisdom. And that surely isn't stewardship. And here's what happens when restraint becomes a habit. First of all, peace. You're going to be more at peace because you don't have financial challenges burdening you and causing anxiety. Your margin will grow because just like consumption is a bit addictive, we have to be careful with the hoarding thing. But as you begin to decrease your lifestyle, grow your margin, begin to acquire investments and assets, that too also becomes even more addictive. I can speak personally than the fashion bug or any other thing that you may have. So your margin will begin to grow. Your options will begin to grow as you educate yourself, and then you actually have the resources to engage in some of these things that we've talked about in the financial literacy space. And then your overall opportunities begin to change because then you have options because you're not constrained simply by lack of capital. And I can speak for that in myself and business ventures and different things that I've been in. Any investor will tell you our number one problem is always capital. So the more capital you have, the better you are at investing, if that makes sense. You just have more shots at the bullseye is simply what it is. So just to sum this point up, restraint today creates flexibility for tomorrow. So as we end this up, I want you to ask yourself a question honestly. What areas of your life have you immediately expanded every time you got some sort of income increase? Was it your lifestyle? Did you just automatically, I can afford to eat out more, I can go to fancier restaurants? Was it subscriptions? Did those start to trickle in because you can afford them? Was it upgrading to travel? I can finally travel, or maybe you got a new job, a new career, and that's a culture within the office. I remember that. Everyone talking about where they went for a vacation. It becomes a bit of a competition, all right? Or is it just flat out shopping? Are you just a retail junkie? Many of us are. Been there and walked down many of these streets, so that's why I can come and talk to you about these potholes. Or have you consumed so much in the past that now you're still paying for it today? That's a reason why you need to begin to pivot and have a system to take you into tomorrow, because that cycle of living on tomorrow's money is something that America itself propagates that message. So remember, whatever automatically expands, that will eventually just consume anything extra you have. Remember, that's called your margin. It'll just begin to consume your margin. So I want you to think about it this way. What would 3 months of expenses sitting in an account right now change for you? If you got 3 months of your expenses in an account right now and not assigned to any bill or anything else, what would that do for you? For most families, we're talking about somewhere between $9,000 and $15,000. That's the number you should be working towards. That's how you change how you respond to pressure. Is to be able to have that type of cushion, that type of margin. If you look up statistically, the amount of households that have $9,000 to $15,000 in reserve in a savings account, it's a very small number nationally. And if you begin to search it by demographic, like 20s through 25 through 35, 35 through 45, your head will expand. Just do a Google search on that right now before we end this live. Just look at it in real time, and it will shock you how little we have as a nation in reserve. To be the richest country on the planet, how we as individual citizens of this nation, how little of the wealth we actually possess. It's concerning, but it's a problem that I'm stepping up to the plate to help you address personally. So if this resonated with you, do us a favor. Let the algorithm know that we're putting out good content. Jump down in the comments, type in reserves, and for doing us that favor, we'll send you a copy of our spending plan template so you can get your personal percentages established. If you want to dive a little deeper, the Minding Our Business community is available in school, and we appreciate you. So look forward to connecting with you and seeing you again next week. Thanks for joining us at the MOB Academy. Now stop scrolling and go mind your business.